And in 3 years, Oasis will have gone from being a new signing to one of rock's true giants.
What happened to you in those 3 years? So it's a big question.
It is a big question, and it deserves a big answer. We're just lads from a council estate. Two brothers.
No, it's the footy farm.
Head cases.
Come on, you balls!
Noel has a lot of buttons. Liam has a lot of fingers.
I remember smashing Liam's head in with a cricket bat. I'm not an obnoxious dude, but somebody must have got on my tip.
Okay, welcome to Rock Docs, a podcast about music documentaries, brought to you by Treble, treblezine.com. They are music writers and good people. And on point with today's episode, I'm going to point you to 1995, the year Oasis made us want to live forever. It's an article from a few years ago on their site that will take you back to that year that I remember well, and maybe some people listening weren't even born yet. But anyway, but we'll link to that in the show notes. Anyway, I'm here with my co-host
Andrew Keatts,
and we have a guest today, a first timer, Brendan Dentino. Say hi, Brendan.
In the spirit of the Gallaghers, I will be the greatest guest in Rock Docs history.
Are you ready? You, we have the greatest fans, and this is the greatest podcast of all time. So this is it.
I'm mad for it, as Oasis says.
Okay. So so we're here to talk about Oasis, a band that is in the news right now, and we're known for being so timely all the time. So so we're here to talk about Oasis Supersonic, a 2016 documentary directed by Mat Whitecross. He's done a few other Rock Docs. I don't think any that we cover, but like what about Coldplay?
He has one credit that is very relevant to the Rock Doc cinematic universe.
Which is he did Scott Walker. Oh, he edited Scott Walker doc.
He edited Scott Walker, 30th Century Man.
Okay, good to know. We love that documentary. Yeah. As you'll recall from watching it, Scott Walker, surprisingly chill dude.
Yeah, like considerably more chill than the Gallagher brothers.
Yeah, surprisingly. If you listen to the music, you might think these are kind of soft-hearted romantic guys, and Scott Walker is a maniac, and something of the reverse to an extent.
Whitecross also did a documentary on the music of James Bond.
Okay.
I thought that would be right up your alley, Mr. Lizerbram.
Because I'm like extremely suave and cool and sometimes murder people.
I was thinking because you like movies a lot, but
okay, I'm going to edit out the part about me murdering people.
Yeah, right.
Okay. The ladies' man part speaks for itself. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So, and I guess the producers had also done Amy, which we also have not gotten to, but another sometimes troubled British rock star.
Yeah.
I guess that's what we'd say about Amy Winehouse right now. A sometimes troubled British rock star. Anyway, Brendan, I think sometimes we allow our guests to pick the documentary, but I think in this case, because you wrote so eloquently about the band Oasis.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I think we reached out to you about doing this one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so I am the best writer no one's ever heard of, and I wrote an essay called "The Hope and Selfishness of Oasis," which was in response to their reunion, and then Andy reached out to come on to discuss Supersonic, the documentary, which I've watched 4 times, once in theaters when they were rescreening it in Mission Valley Lowe's or whatever at AMC, and I just came off a flight from England after seeing Liam Gallagher do his 30th anniversary tour for Definitely Maybe, which was the debut album for Oasis. So I am a dyed-in-the-wool Oasis person, and I am super excited to discuss this documentary.
But you're not like
Oh.
an Oasis guy going back to like the 90s, right?
Insofar as I rode in a car in the 90s and their music was on the radio constantly, but I was too young to. I was born in 91, so my brother had them. He was older than me, but I missed them when they were
Okay.
in their prime.
Okay. And we'll also link to your essay because it's very good. And that's what got our attention here. But all right, Andy, when did you get on board the Oasis train?
Well, I was a middle schooler when Morning Glory came out. I cannot say that that I was up with Definitely Maybe when it had its run. Caught them when they were inescapable on MTV and commercial radio when those were the things that I was exposed to. But liked them immediately, like very many people, and also they were just so massive, so supremely massive, like the biggest thing post, like Nirvana, Pearl Jam at that point. And I was very into them as a middle school kid, and honestly, I was remembering I got really into them like my senior year of high school, which at that point felt like dipping into like retro shit like that. Like it was only 6 years later, but it felt like I might as well have been exploring like like the swing era or something to like be
Wow.
going back to 1996.
Did you
Even though
stay
and they were
with
still
them?
making records at the time. Yeah, I mean, I've never stopped liking Oasis, but I probably would say that I've stopped being obsessive about them. And
Yeah.
like most of their later records I probably listened to like 3 times each.
Yeah,
Something
I
like
think
that.
I think to Americans, their later albums are irrelevant and mostly skippable. That is my
Yeah.
my opinion on that output.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
obviously
so you are the like the core age. Like you were a college kid when they were huge.
maybe I mean I probably knew about them maybe when I was a senior in high school, but so they were huge when I was in college, and I also had like some friends in college who were like I don't think I had friends who were from England, but I had friends who were from like other parts of the world where like they were into English culture more.
Yeah.
And so I think like I mean, even people from Canada might have been on them more. You know what I mean? Like, just because they're
Well,
like,
it's like they talk about in this movie. Like they go to Japan and they're the biggest band in the world, but they
right,
come to America and they're nothing yet.
right. So, so I knew it was like, oh yeah, these guys are kind of coming up, and then you talk to somebody, it's like, oh yeah, they're like the biggest thing in the world, and whatever.
Mhm.
I never saw them. My wife did see them back in the day. Shout out to Mana. But I never caught them. Like I had a friend who like went to go see them open for U2 in like the Bay Area or something, and I was like dying to go. It sounded like an awesome show, but I didn't make it. So I just I never kind of caught them, and like most Americans, I probably the last record that I owned of theirs or like really got into. I mean, I owned Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, so like that was kind of the waning days in terms of their commercial appeal in America, and I knew that they like remained a big act, especially in England, but and then it would just be kind of checking out some songs here or there from the later stuff, but I and I'd never seen this movie until a couple days ago, and again, not because of not liking him, it was like one of these things that I would get around to it.
Mhm.
It's like, oh yeah, that's probably good. I probably would enjoy it. It's these guys are cool, but it just never was a big priority. Like I never had a huge Oasis phase that came after like when they were on MTV and stuff all the time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I never, unlike you, Brendan. Like I never went
Yeah.
deep.
There was like a 3-year period where this was like one of 3 music documentaries that was on Netflix at all times.
Yeah.
And I think I just watched a bunch. It was like this and like Rush.
Okay.
You could just watch
Also,
them.
a killer doc that we need to do. We need to do an episode
Well,
on.
you know what's
Anyway.
interesting about when this documentary came out? It came out in 2016, which Oasis broke up in 2009. So that's a 7-year
Right.
difference, which I was thinking about rewatching it the other day. And like, that is insane. And the Gallagher brothers are executive producers on this. So they were involved. Can
Yes.
you imagine like
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen in like 1991 doing a documentary about Born in the USA.
Yeah.
Like it is
Right.
so conceited and narcissistic to do a retrospective 7 years after your breakup.
Yeah, it is sort of like too soon. And but it also shows something about these guys that comes across in the movie, which is like, no matter what, they are very proud of what they did and Oasis. And they never neither for all their trashing of each other that has happened in over the years, neither of them ever trashed the band or the work, I don't think. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they've consistently been, like, I don't think Liam ever talks trash about Noel as a songwriter.
Like it's like actually those songs sucked, or
Yeah, no.
yeah.
That's
no.
he's always been like willing to get up and sing those songs in front of a crowd.
Talk shit about a lot of other musicians.
Yes,
but not their music.
Their opinion that they were the greatest band in the world, like that coalesced in like 1992 or 3, and it has never changed, I don't think. And credit to them.
But that's part of the appeal, I think, right? And what makes the documentary work, even if it came out 7 years after their breakup. But yeah, Liam's entire personality is Oasis, and
yeah, that's it.
It
exactly
is
right.
That is who he is, and who he'll always be.
Yeah,
is that band?
Yeah, true. Yeah, and I guess like in America, the documentary coming out again, I didn't catch it when it first came out, but I guess in like 2016, like they'd been kind of forgotten for a long time, so maybe it was more surprising for British fans that the doc came out so relatively soon after they broke up, because for like when it came out here, I was like, oh yeah, that's a band from the 90s, kind of. I mean, I knew, whatever. I knew basically the timeline, but I don't think I clocked at that time. Like, didn't they just break up a few years ago? Like, I think it seemed like the steam had run out sometime before.
Yeah, it's not their 2000s output, although they stayed together, it's not like Pearl Jam that like fans have hold it in a regard that's like, well, their best music was certainly early, but they became a true live band in the 2000s, and so that like rounds out their the story of the band. They were much more of like limping along there towards the end.
I think that's true in America, or at least in England. Yeah. But so they post. There's a ton of on Instagram. There's a ton of fan accounts of Oasis. They posted a song from Heathen Chemistry, which is one of their. I think it was 2002. Terrible album title, terrible album cover, and it was a terrible song from that album. And I commented like, "This is absolute garbage." Like in the account, I got absolutely torn apart for weeks. For weeks, and if you know anything. Yeah. And if you know anything about English vernacular, they have the best, most inventive, criticisms and name calling. And I was loving it, but I'm telling you, they are passionate about the 2000s output across the pond.
Interesting.
Okay, so we should probably watch what we say here,
right,
because we don't want to cause an international incident.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't really listened to most of that stuff, so it may be great. I do not have an opinion. For the record, this is Dave speaking, Dave Lizerbram. I do not have an opinion. I'm not saying it's bad. I have not listened to most of it, so I'm sure it's as good as anything.
It's just such a familiar experience to me of like a lot of bands or musicians I like who put out new music, and I listen to it because I like that band or musician, and I kind of like it. But it's just not better than the stuff of them that I love. So like a month and a half later, when I need to listen to something, like I don't listen to the new thing usually. So like it's like I'm mentioning Pearl Jam a couple times. I listen to every new Pearl Jam album that comes out, and sometimes I have pretty high opinions of it. But then I almost never listen to it again. Like that's pretty much it. It's like a couple times, and then that's like that box is checked, and I'm moving on.
Maybe there's a Jokerman style take on the latter Oasis albums, or where they really grow into their own or something, and Noel or something. There's probably a take to be had out there, and I'm willing to hear it.
Now here's the thing. This movie is not the place for that take, because this movie pretends that nothing happened after 1996.
No, we are living in an eternal 1996, which I think Liam sort of is, in a way. Kind of touching on what you said, Brendan. Like that's, I think he just stopped You know what I mean? It's like the world stopped and he's just living it. I
Yeah.
don't know. I
So
don't know the guy.
Brendan, what as the biggest fan on this show right now, what is your take of the sort of abbreviated window that the movie is concerned with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it is the music, the time period that they love and identify with, the middle of the 90s and their Knebworth concerts, I think is the peak of human society. And I exaggerate only a little bit. I mean, when you look at the concert footage in the documentary, there's no cell phones, just people having a good time. They're ripping for 2 hours, just hit after hit. When the music came out recently, and it's in England, which has trains, and America doesn't have trains, so so it was just the peak of society. But as far as like the documentary as a piece of art, I actually think there's some failings about how they covered only that period. Um, and I
Well,
think, yeah, go ahead.
maybe we'll get to that.
Okay.
Okay, because yeah,
That's a tease. Let's
yeah.
move back.
And the movie, and it actually did surprise me because I'm watching the movie and it's like an hour and a half into the movie. I'm like, wait a minute, it's like still 1995. Like, how are we going to get through them now to 2016? And then like it occurred to me, because I'm sort of dull, that like, oh yeah, the movie started with like this Knebworth concert in 1996. I bet that's the framing of the movie and it's just going to end. And lo and behold, that's what happened. So credit to me, a person who's done 98 episodes of a podcast about music documentaries, for finally figuring out how one works.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just to kind of set the scene for people who haven't seen it, I mean, it is like it's a very standard format of documentary. I mean, it's just like, you know, you don't see them in the now. There's interviews with most of the participating parties, but they're all audio. All the video is like of their, you know, coming up, and then 1996, you know, from basically the first two albums, and it just is like a biographical narrative, straightforward doc.
0.0 third party talking heads.
No,
there's
no.
no non band members, non Oasis world people,
right? Or like a manager or whatever. But there's there's no other people involved. There's no critics. There's no other musicians. There's no none of that. Another thing I noticed is that the word Britpop is not mentioned. Other bands are not mentioned. I'm not even
Blur
sure.
is not mentioned. No,
I don't even think the Beatles are mentioned. Maybe there's might be brief.
They say they mention that he sings like John Lennon. That's the sound.
Okay.
And that's it as far as I could tell. And I went through that the second time I watched it recently. I was hawkish looking for a Beatles mention.
Right.
And I think that's all.
Like, it's not one of these documentaries where like you see them and then they're like, I saw so and so on the telly and then I decided, you know what I mean?
It's as if there is no other music in the world, but they just liked the idea of it. Like that Noel decided that playing a guitar was cool. There's no mention of influences. He never discusses another influence as a songwriter, why he picked up the guitar, how he got into it. When Liam decides he's going to join a band, it's like, because that's how you look cool. That's how you be cool, is to be in a band.
No.
There's no like,
Andy,
I was going to shows a lot, all that stuff.
And you got it slightly wrong. He joined the band because he got smashed in a hammer and his musicianship was beat into him. Yeah.
Beat into.
All right.
Yeah, that's true. There was an influence. You're right. The musicianship beat into him.
So setting this up, they go into, there's very little about anybody else's life. It's really the Noel and Liam show. And they so Noel, they talk about like how their father left the family and, you know, they didn't have much relationship with them, close with the mother. Noel and the other brother, who's barely mentioned, who's not in the band, are older. And then 5 years later, Liam comes along and he's kind of a troublemaking kid. Noel gets into playing. He's like, basically says like, once I discovered weed and guitar, it was like, why would I ever leave my room? Liam has no interest in music. He's just interested in being cool. And then, at school, somebody who he doesn't even know hits him and cracks his head open with a hammer. And he immediately starts hearing music. And credits that for his musicianship. I love it. I mean, Andy, I mean, this is going way back in Rock Doc's lore for the real heads. But like, we've seen some interesting origin stories. I'm thinking of Lee Scratch Perry, who we watched a documentary about him, and he was like working construction, and like the sound of the thing hitting the rocks created a rhythm in his head that it claims created reggae. Basically, like he invented the sound of reggae based on that. So like you get all kinds of stories in here. And again, you don't get the origin story like we saw the Beatles on the telly and we wanted to be that. No, it's just Noel discovered guitar and weed, and Liam got hit with a hammer, and there you go. So I'm not saying if you want your child to be musical, you should hit them with a hammer in the head. I'm explicitly not saying that, but I'm also not saying that. That's all I'm saying.
Or years later, a cricket bat in the head. There's a lot of interesting instruments going over Liam's head.
Liam's the type of guy who's going to get knocked upside the head from time to time.
Yeah.
And that's how they broke up too. They got in a fight and someone hit another one with a guitar. So there's a lot of violence in that band. But somehow they turn out unscathed. They're never in the hospital. So I don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost wonder, like, there's got to be some embellishing going on, right? Like, I'm just having a hard time understanding how a hammer to the head could not be catastrophic. But
it could be that British hammers are small and wimpy compared to American hammers.
American hammers, yeah.
If you hit an American musician in the head with a hammer, they're done for. But a British hammer, maybe it's just like a thumbtacky type situation. I don't know what's going on over there. That's a theory.
So they then go with, like, Noel has a part where he's like, well, the story of the band is that I walked in as the singer on day one, and next thing we knew, Liam says I walked in as a singer. That Noel says he walked in as in joining the band because he joined Liam's existing band. Right.
Noel was a roadie for In Spiral Carpets, which was like a pretty big band. I mean, they weren't like huge, but they were, I knew who they were, they were around, and they were, of course, predated Oasis and predated the real British rock boom. But I guess they were around the same time as like, oh my God, Stone Roses, that kind of thing, like, around 1990-ish. And so, he was a roadie. And like, I mean, he says like, I was already living my life. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a roadie for In Spiral Carpets. What else could I ever want to do? You know what I mean?
So they ask him to be manager first, and he's like,
Oasis does.
Or whatever the Liam's. Do you remember what was Liam's existing band's
name?
Rain.
The Rain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so then he joins, and he seeks to clarify that it was not as though they had meteoric success right away. That in fact they kind of bummed around for like 2 years, or a year and a half.
Well, that touches on one of my criticisms of this thing is that they're such bullshitters. Is that Noel, for example, is so ambitious and so hardworking, but he's like, I figured out my life. I'm going to be a roadie for the In Spiral Carpets. But then later in the documentary, he said, I want Phil Collins's head on my plate, and if I don't get it, I failed. And it's like, so I think this documentary as a whole is less about the story of Oasis and more about the myth making of Oasis, and that's kind of how I consider the whole 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, and so on that point, first, some of their bullshitting is just like, you can't deny how charming they are. Like, they're so funny,
right?
That it's okay. It's entertaining. But other times it's like it's a veil over really understanding what makes them tick. Like, everything. Like, look, songwriting doesn't just land on you. But every Noel song is just like, so I walked in the back and like I fucking wrote "Look Back in Anger." Like, what else are you gonna do? Like there's never any story about how a song happened other than, what do you fucking want from me? I'm a genius, so I wrote it.
My least favorite Noel story is how he wrote Supersonic, which is the namesake of this documentary. It's like, I was just noodling on the guitar, and the guys went to get Chinese takeaway, And yeah, I wrote Supersonic. When they came back, we recorded it. And it's like, get the fuck out of here. You did not write that song. Like, that is not how artistry to that level happens. Like, that is such
Well,
bullshit.
my favorite one of those though, which is like he writes the song "Live Forever" or "Live Forever," and then he comes in and he's like shows it to Bonehead, their guitar player, and he's like, "Hey, I wrote this song," and Bonehead's like, "No, you fucking didn't." And Bonehead himself says in the documentary, he's like, "I was like, no, you fucking didn't. Like, there's no way you wrote that song. Like, my dumbass friend." You know what I mean? Like, imagine some guy you grew up with, you know, like at age 20 or whatever, like walks in and is like, "Hey, I wrote this song." You'd be like, you must not have written that. This story does not add up.
But the thing is, it's like it's important to maintain that fiction. Like that's part of That's part of the Oasis thing is maintaining that, like, you know, cool above all at like the center of the band. And like, you know, he like it comes across in like a few different places as well. Like when Noel leaves the band in San Francisco and he like slips a note under Liam's door, and Liam's response is like, just to make fun of him. like he's making fun of him like 20 years later as like two 40-year-olds. He's like, he wrote some sappy bullshit letter about how are we going to carry on as brothers. It's like anyone else plays this as like an emotional moment and he's like, this little bitch, you know? And like, but like you pick up in that like Noel is sensitive. Noel is an intellectual, as of course anyone who wrote these songs obviously is not too cool for school every fucking minute of their lives. Listen to the songs, listen to what the words he's putting down on a page are.
Right.
But and also to Dave's earlier point, he's also a hard ass worker who went into his room for years, smoked a bunch of weed, and wrote and got good at guitar. You mentioned in a previous podcast the 10,000 hours thing. That's what he did. He became a hardworking musician, but that's not the story he tells.
Yeah, I mean, I love how Noel comes in and immediately assesses the situation when they're like, you know, this little garage band, and is basically just like, all right, I'm going to write the songs. You know what I mean? Like, you know, there's no discussion of Noel having been in a band before. You know what I mean? He just like, listen, I'm not going to be your manager. I'm going to come in and write the songs, and that's what it's going to be. And apparently they all were like, go. But I mean, really setting this all up is the character of Liam, which is just like, seems like he was a rock star. He was just born to be a rock star. You know what I mean? Like, they just talk about how when he was young, even before he got into music, he just had a better haircut. And just like, and Noel's happy to admit, like, as much as he resents it, like, he's happy to admit, like, he just rocks a Parker better than anybody. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, he just, like, had that thing. And, like, the idea that he could even sing, you know what I mean? It was like, he didn't even know he could sing. It just happened to come out of him. Like, but he was just that guy. Like, and that, you know, that the moment was right for that. Because, like, you know, if you're that guy now, like, nobody cares about rock bands in the same way, and you don't. Yeah. The world is not looking to find the next. The world is not looking to find a Liam Gallagher, but he happened to come along when the world was looking for that, and he was that guy.
Yeah, I mean, that is one very valuable piece of this movie, is the sort of the time capsule element of a time when a guitar-based rock band could be this big at any level, and B, that being so fucking arrogant about everything you say and do could be seen as like your quirk as a band, as opposed to this like disqualifying thing that just gets you eaten alive.
Yeah.
You know,
and just knowing that you're cool, like as a 18-year-old, 20-year-old, thinking like, well, how should I leverage the fact that I'm extremely cool? Well, yes. I'll go be in a rock band.
Go be in a band.
That works.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, that's not.
I guess now like that kid just goes and is a DJ.
Or something, or like an influencer, or something.
Yeah.
I wrote, and so I was watching this with a more critical eye, and at one point Liam said, and I wrote this down. I was so amazed me. He said, "I don't really get involved in the music kind of thing," which for someone who is the lead singer of the biggest rock band of the '90s, it's like, what? Who are you? Like,
Yeah, he does.
you don't get involved in the music kind of thing. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. I mean,
Noel also, you mentioned this. Noel also says there's not a day that goes by that I wish I could rock a parka like that man.
I mean, Noel is revealed in this movie to be extremely a big dork. I mean, he really comes off like a big dork, and not in a bad, like, he's just like, he's a music dork.
He's the one who had to write the music. I mean, it's all part of the mythos of this band, but it is a great dynamic. Two brothers where one is like this nerdy songwriter and the other is the coolest fucking guy of his decade.
Right.
And they hate each other and they talk shit better than any two. Like it's just a really good dynamic. If you were writing it from scratch, you would have to be really proud of yourself for coming up with that those character dynamics.
Yeah, I mean, we follow contemporary music, and it's hard to think of a band. Like, there's still bands that come out, but there's hard to think of bands that really hate each other. And for most of rock history, there was a lot of hating going on in band members, from the Beatles on down.
Well,
like
even
the Kinks, the Who, you name it.
Well, even like famously, the Eagles hated each other and have a documentary about how much they hated each other.
Yeah.
If you stand up the moments of the Eagles hating each other to the moment of Oasis hating each other in this movie, it does not compare. The Eagles band members are mostly just like taking sly shots at the other ones in the press.
Right.
Noel hits Liam over the head with a cricket bat.
They're really having at it. Yeah.
Well, I wonder if the culture doesn't allow for that, though. Like that the parameters of fame wouldn't allow two people or a group to hate each other like that. I have a hard time thinking that could happen today.
No, you have to like think about something like Outkast, where it's like, if you're into Outkast, you know that they sort of grew apart.
Right.
And like, but it all happens in like subtext. It's all stuff that you have to like pick and choose stuff. You know, there's no open displays of hatred.
But even that is so many years ago.
Well, I guess, yeah.
I
I guess we have Jane's Addiction last week.
No, but again, these are all, I'm talking about like somebody relatively new. You know, like, maybe the guys in BTS hate each other, but you're not going to know. You know what I mean? Like, it's too press managed. Or like, I guess if you're like a middling to mid-level rock bands, like, again, maybe the guys in the War on Drugs hate each other. I don't know, but
no one in the press gives a shit to even like figure it out.
I mean, maybe they would be bigger if they talk shit about each other. I don't know. You know what I mean? But like, there are bands that are happening, but you don't hear about King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard just having it out. I don't know. You know, maybe they all get along. Maybe it's just a more enlightened age where like bands go to therapy and deal with these things.
It's like Rostam leaving like Vampire Weekend.
Yeah.
Like, I've never read a full article on like a TikTok blow by blow on what happened between Rostam and Ezra. Right? It was just like he put out a statement that was like, for the good of the band, we're going to go separate ways. We had a great time working together, and like, everyone was like, okay, that's your business. We will leave that be.
Yeah, that's true.
It's
none of our business.
Yeah.
Something that struck me during the documentary, though, is because it was all had archival clips, was how open with the media that both of the brothers were, with just saying the most ridiculous shit, just about themselves, about other musicians, about anything, politics, whatever,
about the country wherever they were, like just open like cultural criticism of the place that they were at. Yeah.
I don't think anyone does that today would have the standing to do that, or the courage, really, which I think there's a space for that, but just no one has done it recently. No one new has done that recently.
Yeah. I guess not really too many people. Azalea Banks, like she's a good poster, but like she doesn't have much, she just doesn't have much cultural capital at this point. So there's just, you get Kendrick shit talking about Drake, but that's a different kind of thing. That's a beef.
Yeah.
I will say, I have always thought that British people have the best outlook on America. They like see our weird cultural elements better than anyone. And I think it's Noel had one in here that was great. He's like, you meet these people in America that take you under their wing and just like put you up at their house for 3 days. And he's like, you don't see that anywhere else. I think he's talking about the like girl he met in San Francisco who he who he ran away with. I love that idea of like some British guy being like, "These fucking Americans are so weird. I like met this person out of their club, and I had a mental breakdown, and she took me into her home for 5 days, like broke up Oasis and told me I could stay at her place until I recuperated."
Yeah, it's it is weird because like they did get big in America, but if you'd only watch this movie, you would think they tried to make it in America, they played some clubs, it didn't really work out, and that was it. That was the end of their American adventure.
Yes, it's totally true. I guess that is part of my complaint about so we really only look at the formation of the band until the Knebworth shows in '96, right?
Right. First 2 albums.
And there's like even in that, there's never really a point in this movie where there's like sustained good times and they're just enjoying fame. It always feels fragile. It always feels like it's teetering. Like they're moving from one chaotic moment to the next. They're talking shit about how big they are and they're enjoying fame to a certain extent, but also they're like preparing for it to collapse at all moments. And yeah, like to your point about, it seems like in this movie, if this is all you watched, it would seem like they never got big in America. Like I want to see like a long stretch of them being the biggest band in the world and it not feeling like they either had just broken up or were just about to break up.
Yeah, to that point, they're arguably bigger in a kind of media tabloid concert sense in '97 when they put out "Be Here Now," which is the follow up. At that point, they were just like a careening. I don't. They were just a train ready to fly off the rails. But we don't get that story in this documentary. And
It would be
maybe that's the
impossible if
sequel.
you only watch this movie. It would be impossible to believe that they put out 5 more albums and stayed together for another 13 years.
It's crazy. The other thing that the movie doesn't really get into is like, I mean, it's very revealing in a way, but also like you don't see anything about that. Not only do you not see them really having a good time, like they talk about taking drugs, but you don't really see a lot of partying. You don't see any girls. Like their like social tabloid lives were very, were a big deal at that time. They're like dating models and talking whatever. None of the, not that like it has to be, but like again, you don't even get like a montage of them, out on the town,
No.
being the toast of London and like dating all the models of the day or whatever. Like you'd think you would just see that because it goes with their image. You know what I mean?
It basically skips right to like first time in LA. Man, they had crystal meth out there, so we didn't sleep for days.
That's true. Yeah, there is a lot of talk of that crystal meth scene, but but they all claim that they thought it was coke, and they just did a lot of it, and then realized it wasn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the sex, drugs. It's really just about the rock and roll. They mentioned the drugs. The sex is really not even part of the conversation, which I remember them like talking about like girls all the time in the press. But so I just always thought of that as part of their image, like they were, like that they, he talks
that was part of enjoying being, the biggest rock band in the fucking world.
And he talks about how like you start a band because you want to get a big telly and a fit bird, and you really don't see a lot of the luxury either. You know what I mean? Like it's like them in the studio and then them touring, but it's not like, you don't see them driving fancy cars or doing any of the like that stuff. Yeah. There's no you don't get to live that life vicariously, is what I'm saying.
Just the part where Liam is compared to a Lamborghini.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So Brendan, if you go back to when you first saw this, it's my understanding that some of this early footage was sort of adored by hardcore fans when they were seeing the movie for the first time. That there's like some of those early rehearsals and Liam singing sad song, I guess was like the first time anyone had ever seen that Liam had sang sad song. And
it's interesting, I think, and I was trying to find the origin of why they made this and how they found all this footage, but I couldn't find anything online. But it's funny, all of the fan accounts now clip from Supersonic, the documentary, and use the clips. the one that sticks out is when they're in a basement or some sort of room, and I think it was 93 or 94 before they hit it big, and they were rehearsing all around the world, which was on Be Here Now, but it wasn't released on Definitely Maybe or What's the Story, Morning Glory. But Noel had already written it before they were famous, and it's just a glimpse into pre-fame that I think is so rare in the archival footage world, where they're singing a song that is going to be a huge single later, but
Yeah.
they haven't released it yet. Most archival footage is bands playing shitty songs that get released 15, 20 years down the line as unreleased B-sides, and only the nerdiest core fan base could love those songs. But they were rehearsing bangers.
Yeah, yeah, and they've since released a lot of that stuff, right? Like
Yes, and then
Liam singing sad songs on like the 30th anniversary of Definitely Maybe. And
I think on Apple Music there is now 4 different versions of Definitely Maybe, which I can't keep up with which one's the best one at this point anymore. But yeah, it's starting to become a universe, an Oasis universe, really, with all the content. Part of it is to go into the gossipy side that Noel got divorced recently, so a lot of people speculate that this whole burgeoning Oasis universe and the reunion is based on his needing money, but that is just more the gossipy, was not part of the documentary or the official story of Oasis.
Yeah, I love that scene of them like in a rehearsal. First of all, the fact that like they seem to have filmed themselves a lot when they were very, very early. Like they had that confidence, because it's not like, you know, a bunch of young guys drinking and like they're in a band and they're kind of filming, they're kind of goofy and awkward. Like sometimes you see that kind of stuff where it's like, you know, they're kind of trying to find themselves. Like they film themselves, you know, rehearsing and doing stuff at a, you know, when they were like nobody and they had like barely played a gig because like they believed it, and like the goods are already there. Like, you know what I mean? It's so fully formed. They sound like Oasis.
It absolutely sounds fully formed. Yeah, and like I don't like, you know, that Definitely Maybe, and the stuff in that period always sounds like Brian Jonestown Massacre to me, almost.
Okay.
You know, like that, like before Noel, I think, starts writing more complex songs. But yeah, I mean, it's like it's all right there at the very beginning, and you know, I think you sort of hear that story told a lot, particularly in the movies that we watch. Like, I think one of the early Tom Petty producers in that doc says, like, there he was, a fully formed rock star, ready to go. But here we actually have the video proof that it was like that. It was exactly that they absolutely were a fully formed thing right away.
Yeah, so we get the other guys. I mean, I want to make sure that we are paying everybody their due, because, you know, the band originally is you know, those two guys, and then Bonehead, the guitar player, Gwigsy. I always feel like I've never been able to say that word properly, because it's like you need to have that British accent in order.
I was
going to
say, yeah, it's a British word. Yeah, you can't. Say, we can't. We don't speak that language.
On bass, and Tony McCarroll on drums, and we get a little bit about each of those guys. And Gwigsy is not, like, he left the band in '99. He's not in the document. Like, he's not interviewed. The other two guys are. And it is interesting to kind of get their perspective, especially Bonehead, because he just seems so, like, I would say he just seems kind of amused a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, he's stoked on the fact that he got to be a rock star, and he just seems like, you know, like he was like along for this ride. I don't know. Like, he comes off very appealing to me.
One of your friends of the pod, Steve Hyden, my favorite music critic, I think in one of his articles, paraphrasing him, I don't have it in front of me, said the purpose of Bonehead was for Oasis to have a band member named Bonehead. That was basically the gist of him. I don't really know what he brought musically, but he brought something spiritually and culturally that is essential to that band. Hyden is correct.
What I make of him is, you know, it's like if you have like a job that's not so good, but you know you're not going to leave. You can't be one of these toxic people who just walks in every day miserable with it. You just got to make your peace. He realized, like, I am on this rocket ship and going to be inside of this rocket ship with the two craziest people on this planet, I'm either going to have to be amused by it or I'm going to lose my mind. And he chose to be amused by it. And he kind of just went along. Like, I'm not going to get involved in the fights with them. I'm not going to, I'm not going to try to break things up. I'm not going to try to smooth things over. I'm just going to be here and be ready to play the guitar when they say it's time to play the guitar.
Yeah. I will say, I'm just going to stand up for Bonehead a little bit that, like, yeah, he's the rhythm guitar player. They're not the most complicated songs in the world.
No.
If you learn how to play guitar, you could play these songs pretty easily, but on the other hand, like, to his credit and also Guigsy, they talk about Tony's, challenges as a drummer a little bit.
Which is another absolutely classic Rock Docs trope.
Great. Yeah, exactly.
The first drummer that made the recording of the early albums absolutely more painful than it needed to be is like, that is a standard fare in the Rock Doc canon.
I mean, we're going back to the Beatles for this one, those two guys, I would say, like, maybe are a little bit underrated in terms of, like, and maybe that's because I played bass in bands. So it's like, well, like, you can, how hard can it be? Well, it's not that hard, but, also, like, to make it sound good. And, like, the band always, like, I've never heard them. I mean, other than, like, that LA show where they were all on crystal meth, they always sound pretty tight. You know what I mean? Like, they're just, they're playing, their parts are pretty simple, but they're locked in and tight, and those guys are doing the thing. They might be the bench players in a way, but they're the role players, but they're doing their thing really well, so that Noel and Liam can actually just kind of be who they are.
Yeah, the point is not for them to be virtuosos.
No
one is in the room for that.
No. But they play their role. But yeah, I mean, let's go the story about Tony getting fired and then how they bring in his replacement is one of you guys want to tee this up? It's so good, Brendan. Maybe you want to.
Yeah. Geez. So if I remember correctly, basically Tony McCarroll was Noel hated him, and I think tried to get him to quit. By making fun of him relentlessly. And Tony, if you're listening, if you're a Rock Docs fan, I love you, but I'm just reporting the facts here. Noel tried to get him to quit. He would not quit. So finally, they had one of their managers or handlers fire McCarroll. They had a gig like the next day on Top of the Pops, which is like, at the time, what would be an American's equivalent of Top of the Pops? Like Unplugged or like
American Idol almost, in a way. Like, it was like everybody watched it. Like, it was a big deal.
And then they found some guy who looked like an accountant, probably was an accountant. I think his name is Alan White. And then he walked in and was like doing some beats. And Noel was like, will you stop and just play the songs? And he played top of the Pops that day. And he stuck around for into the 2000s. So I guess he wasn't that bad. I guess he fit the bill.
I love Noel's like long digression about just how much he hates the existence of drummers.
Yeah.
It's just like it's just such a tedious triviality of life that he has to deal with, that like he can't do without them. It's like, I wish I was made dance music and I could just press buttons and not even have to deal with these people.
I mean, let me just say, as a person who's been in bands, and I played with some great drummers, but nonetheless, that's that's an opinion that's not not often spoken. But Noel's not afraid to speak it.
I think that speaks. So with the reunion, their marketing is Noel and Liam. That's it. It's half their face is basically the literature so far that we have. I think that starts with this documentary. They basically were like, you know what, guys, you were great. You were a part of this. You were team players. You were great bench players. But the myth of Oasis, it's Noel and Liam. I'm sorry. They basically edited the story to just center the brothers. So maybe at the time, the rest of the players were more relevant or important or even popular among fans. I don't know. That'd actually be an interesting question for someone who lived it at the time.
Yeah. But Bonehead's got to be on this tour, though, right?
Well, he's had some illness, I think. Some kind of, I'm not 100% sure that he's in a health state. I may be misspeaking, but if I'm right, he was the one who had some kind of health issue that was maybe preventing him from playing a lot.
Bonehead did play on Liam's latest solo tour. I
Okay.
feel like it is the brothers only care about the brothers, but and you are correct. If Bonehead is not part of this reunion, I'm going to go to the shows, but no matter what. But I'm like, they'll fuck that up. I think the brothers know better. Bonehead will be there.
All right.
Yeah. Shout out to Bonehead. He comes off well in the doc. And the other guys, Tony does as well. Yeah. I mean, he basically Alan White, the replacement drummer, like Noel's like, I don't care how you play the drums. You look the part. Let's go. You know what I mean? Like, well, who are you sending over? He's like, oh, a guy that's like kind of a mod because he played with Paul Weller from the Jam, and he's like, great, okay, he'll do. You know, so which I know is not true. Like you know, this guy cares about music. Noel does, and he's would not have something in his band that is not up to spec. And yet
it's just uncool to be like a taskmaster about that stuff. To be like, I was really worried about whether he was going to be on time.
We rehearsed a lot of drummers.
We rehearsed a lot of drummers. Yeah.
I mean, they could have got anybody at that point, you know. And yeah, I mean, this movie is not interested in interrogating the veracity of every statement that comes out of these guys' mouths, and rightly so. It's just not that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's tale telling, which is beautiful.
I do like that, you know, the and this is not the first time this story has been told about a classic album, but that like he would write a song a day for Morning Glory, share the lyrics with Liam. Liam would sing them basically as they would end up on the album, first try through, and they'd get everything recorded and work on the new song the next day. They did the whole thing in like a week and a half. And we actually have footage of Liam like reading the lyrics for the first time and singing them aloud and like basically getting it perfect on the first try.
Angelic.
Like basic. Yeah.
Angelic.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And Noel's just sitting there with him, like trying to like teach him the phrasing and barely even needs to. It's an amazing like moment caught on film.
Yeah.
One of my favorite clips of the documentary is in that studio session. They show a chalkboard or a chart, and it's the song lineup, right, for the tracking the progress of the tracks. And it is like the best songs ever written and recorded. it is like it's not just Morning Glory hits. It is also the B-sides, which are legendary in their own right, which could be a conversation. Yeah, could be a conversation unto itself. And it's like, this was what you were tracking? Like, what the hell? And I think in another piece, I compared it to some of the great pop culture runs of all time. So you have like Tom Hanks, 90s, Bruce Springsteen's 70s and 80s. Noel Gallagher's like 93 to 96, right up there. And that chart in that documentary is evidence of that.
Oh yeah, he was putting up like Gretzky numbers. Like, you know what I mean? Or maybe like who's somebody who had like an incredible peak, but maybe not the longest career at the top.
Yeah.
You know? He's one of these peak versus career artists where or sports figures where you could be like, well, you know, Bo Jackson, if he'd been able to keep it up, you know, he could have been the greatest of all time, you know, or whoever.
Yeah. Griffey.
That might be the
Griffey
theme
to an
of one of
extent,
my yeah. I might make that a piece, Dave. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's all you. It's all you. But yeah, Griffey's a fairly good comp. Like, because he's super elite and incredible, but if you'd kept writing songs at that level for like 5 more albums,
even like half as good, you know, like
he would have been considered the greatest songwriter of all. Like if he had written, 5 more, definitely maybe some Morning Glories. Not that there's not good songs on some of the the albums that I am familiar with after that, but it's not at that elite. It didn't break through in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is pretty wild. Yeah, just the fact that the movie really makes up a lot of Liam being a savant. You know what I mean? Like they are fully on that train where like he's just a genius.
He knew how to do this.
Yeah, he's just a genius. He didn't try. He didn't care. He just wanted to do whatever he wanted, do all the drugs, party, get in fights, mess up. He talks about it all the time. But he also just is very revealing, like talking about how it felt to be in the middle of the crowd. You know what I mean? Yeah. With like all those people standing around singing your songs and so forth. So, but So he did think about it, but again, he just was like the movie would have you believe he could just walk in and nail it and be that guy right away.
So another through line in the movie is Noel's, which I don't take any of this to be bullshit at all, but Noel's clear understanding that what made Oasis truly special was how much the music and the resonated with the fans and the chemistry between the fans and the band, and how much the fans singing the songs back to him live elevated them. And there's like 5 or 6 moments. I've got them all written down here. But what did you guys make of again sort of emo Noel saying the things that Liam would never say?
Emo Noel. I have to say, we talked about earlier that the brothers never talked shit on Oasis. I don't think either of them have talked shit on fans. And you
No.
get that, with some bands. And I don't mean like they're aggressive or dismissive, but in interviews sometimes they'll complain about the weight of fame, or how fans can, the expectations, either personally or artistically. They're never like that. They really do honor their fan base, and as a member of it, I have to say I appreciate it. I appreciate being appreciated by emo Noel Gallagher.
That's true.
I mean, he talks about the band's relationship with their fan base in a way that's very familiar to me as a Fish fan, the way like Trey talks about it. But like that reads hippy dippy bullshit when it's like, oh, well, something amazing happens when we're out there without a net, improvising, and the fans are there for it. Like if you don't like that band, you can hear that and roll your eyes and being like, shut the fuck up. You like, why can't you write a hook after all these years? But Noel is like not saying anything all that different than that when he's saying like, sure, I'm proud of the songs I've written. Liam's an amazing singer, but what's amazing is when 250,000 people are at Knebworth yelling, "Don't look back in anger" at right back at us.
Yeah, and the fact that it's become part of their lives. Like he's like, all we did was write the songs and record them. Like the fact that the songs live on and will live on forever is because of the fans. And that's just an interesting perspective. It doesn't really 100% seem like bullshit. You know what I mean?
Oh, I don't think it's bullshit at all.
It seems much more sincere. It seems much more sincere than most of the kind of, we all did it all for the fans, or whatever kind of thing. Like it's coming from a different.
It feels like it's a genuine insight that he feels about the band,
right?
It's not lip service to the fans, because like after all they're going to need to buy 1 million tickets to the reunion tour. I think he's actually telling you something that he thinks was unique about why they became such a phenomenon. And
also like they are very candid about the reduced circumstances that they grew up in. Not that they were like the poorest people in the world, but they had some troubles with the family, and the mom not being able to have a lot of money and all these things. And there is an element to which they even though like for the last 30 whatever years they've been zillionaires, they're not faking it in terms of like, let me go back to the old neighborhood and pretend I'm still this guy. But they do, I think, see themselves in the people that they that love the band, and they feel connected to that. I think it just comes off that way.
Yeah.
I this is kind of breaking my brain. I have to say, I never considered this element of this band. This could be another piece, another way for me to talk about myself, which I love to do in my writing. I can center myself in a new Oasis story. So thank you. This is good.
Yeah. No, I mean they are sort of a populist band in a way, right?
Yeah. I mean, like
they were always trying to be huge, but like they wanted to write songs that connected with people. It's not like they were trying to get over on people like, oh, what's the latest fad? In fact, the opposite, because like Liam talks about how like when they came up in Manchester, it was like the Manchester scene, and it was like rave music, and they hated that. He had no connection with that. And so like, there's no, like what they were doing was, I mean, being in a rock band was still like, a credible path, but nonetheless, they were not doing, something that they saw as like following a trend or listen. They didn't care what else was on the radio. They were doing their own thing.
Yeah. And I mean, so I saw Noel and the High Flying Birds 2 years ago
or a year
You
ago.
were at that
Whenever
show?
it was. Not the one in San Diego. I saw him in Boston.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The San Diego one is a cool story. He went to Bluefoot to watch
Can I
the
can I
football
tell
that
this story real
afternoon, right?
quick? Do we
Yeah,
have
yeah,
time
yeah.
for this story? Okay, so I
Yes,
was
of
We have all
living
the
in
time in the world.
Okay, I was so at the time Bluefoot is a big soccer slash football bar in San Diego, North Park neighborhood. I had tickets for the show, which was happening down in Chula Vista at an amphitheater later that night. That day, Champions League final was on. Noel and Liam, giant fans of Manchester City Football Club in their native Manchester. I get a text, and I was living in North Park at the time. I get a text from my Oasis buddy, and he says, Noel is at the bar in San Diego. You need to go. I was in jeans and boots walking to the grocery store. I threw away my reusable bag on the street and started sprinting to Bluefoot to get to the bar. I get to the bar. There's a line out the door, and I'm trying to look in and see him. I couldn't get in. I couldn't see him, so I just gave up. I went to the show later that night, and he said, "Today was the greatest day of my life. I lost my voice. I will sing as long as I can." And he cut his set short because he just could not sing anymore after cheering for Man City.
Wow, that's fantastic.
So anyway,
Yeah, I
sorry to
remember.
interrupt
I
you.
remember that.
No,
No, it's fine. I remember that happening, and it's kind of the same thing. Like you could watch that in the hotel room. Like he
Right.
wanted to go watch it. He found out what the big soccer bar in San Diego is. If it wasn't going to be Bluefoot, it was going to be one of the other ones. He wanted to go be around people. It's
Right. He wanted
Uh,
the experience of like
yeah.
being a punter in the pub watching football.
Yeah.
And he got
but
it.
yeah, but in any case, I saw a different show on that tour in Boston because I was out of town from San Diego that day. But it's incredible, and like what I'm saying is like when the entire crowd is singing those songs back at him, or in this case, just being a part of singing those songs, I mean, it's a truly euphoric experience. It's as good as anything in rock and roll, and that's it. That's not even Oasis. That's Noel's current project where you hear his new stuff at the beginning, and then he gives you like a little Oasis mini set at the end. And I mean, it's like it's an easy thing to be glib about. And if anyone's going to be glib about something like that, you would imagine it to be the Gallagher brothers. And he's not glib about it, and I think it's the right position.
But to that point, Matt Healy of 1975 made a comment, and it kind of went viral with the reunion, that there is no one who is at a High Flying Bird show or a Liam solo show that would rather not be at an Oasis show. And I think no matter how great their shows are separately and their fan bases are bringing that Oasis energy and they're playing those songs, it can't be the same as them together.
Of course. No, and they
No.
know that.
For sure.
They know that. And it does kind of speak for like, the I mean, there is something awesome about music when, you're in a big arena, or like it could even be a smaller venue, but it's something where like everybody knows these songs and everybody's singing along. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's great to see go to a tiny little club and see a new artist you never heard of and enjoy and really get off on that, or that you might know one song, whatever. But like when the kind of sing along, like we're all in this together aspect of it. Like I love Guided by Voices, and that's a big part of their whole thing. Like everybody's supposed to sing along to every song, and and obviously they're playing much smaller venues than Oasis. But what I've seen, Bruce Springsteen, U2, Paul McCartney, who name people playing stadiums.
The Killers,
sure, whoever, yeah, like
thing, right?
or whatever, or even you go see Taylor Swift or whoever, like the energy of a lot of people singing along to the songs for like 2 hours or whatever it is an awesome thing. And I think that people who are like, only into, going to see music in tiny little clubs and it has to be somebody unknown and whatever, like I get that because I like that too. But, it's easy to dismiss the like
it's easy to dismiss
being with thousands of other people who are feeling the same thing.
Right.
Just like sports,
Yeah. So Noel says, what does he say? He says, people make the mistake of thinking that the people on the stage are defining something. But what if no one shows up? And like, I think like I just don't think that's bullshit. I think he really is like, no, like this only becomes what it is when there's that many people out in front of us. It's integral to the thing. there's a chemistry between us, and that's what elevates it.
And they were not surprised when it happened.
And they totally thought that they were
like, this is what's going to happen. We're going to be
we've
the
been
biggest
waiting
band
for
in the
this.
world,
Yeah.
and everybody is going to sing along with our songs forever. And that absolutely happened. And they were just like, yeah, I mean, the confidence is incredible.
And now I feel bad about saying everything Noel says is bullshit at the top of this podcast. Because I'll buy what you're saying, Andy, because in the documentary, Bonehead said at a point, you get a glimpse of Noel, like the true Noel when he's recording and he's singing a song and he's on his guitar, and it's almost like a little child, right? Or I can't remember exactly how he described him, but he's like, it's almost sweet, like a little kid just expressing himself. And then when he's done the session, he calls you a name and tells you to fuck off or something, and it's back to it's back to the Noel. So I think to Bonehead's point and to your point, him honestly, sincerely express his admiration for the fan base is sincere as part of his actual emo Noel, as you put it.
Yeah,
I mean, he's a sincere bullshitter.
Yes,
like he not that he's convinced himself everything he's saying is true, but he's a sincere bullshitter in the sense that like that part of him is also authentic. He didn't make that up to like build an armor from the fans because he's a rock star and he can't reveal himself or something like that. He didn't come up with this persona. Like that is really him.
Well, so here's the other thing about Oasis that comes after this movie, but before the reunion. I think like so. I would tell me if you think this is right. The last 18 months or so, this reunion has felt basically inevitable, right? Like I remember the rumors
2020. Yeah, but yeah, I'll yeah.
At some point, it seemed like it was going to happen.
It was going to happen. They started like, if not necessarily teasing it, they started winking at it, I think, right?
But here's my not a hot take, but in retrospect, this is the first time I watched a documentary since they announced reunion. I think Supersonic is the start, is the beginning of the reclamation project. I think when they went to the archives, when they saw the response, Noel, who controls all the Oasis stuff, was like, oh shit, there's something here. And they had their own projects, and then COVID. I think the documentary is the start, but yeah, to your point, Andy, the last 18 to 2 years, I think it really ramped up.
And I think part of that was from, like Kate Bush gets this like Gen Z pop from Stranger Things, and various other artists get a new pop from becoming TikTok dances or whatever. I think Noel and Liam are the only people who have gotten a pop for their band just by talking shit on like Instagram reels and stuff that people repurposed, like podcast appearances, media appearances, where they're just being themselves and their personalities are so magnetic and they're so funny. Like they're like two of the most charming talkers in the world. And like, I think that stuff hit social media and people were like, no one talks like this anymore. These guys are mean-spirited and funny at the same time in a way that doesn't feel bad. And I think that really stoked the flames on this.
I also like, it occurred to me when I'm watching the movie, and this ties into what you're saying. Like, I mean, to my knowledge, I don't remember ever hearing an Oasis song in an ad. Like, at least in the US, maybe elsewhere there, but like, I don't remember hearing a lot of Oasis songs appearing in movies and TV shows. I'm sure there's some examples, but I can't think of any. Like their music is not overexposed in that way. Like they did like, okay, they're out there both performing the songs. And I'm sure like whatever version of classic rock or 90s rock radio is still playing it, but it has been kept as something of an underexploited resource or something in a way,
Yeah.
Well, Wonderwall is a
mosquito
meme
in
song.
Amber.
Wonderwall, Wonderwall is like almost like.
Yeah, Wonderwall's almost a different thing. That's almost in a different category. Like that. So anyway, here's Wonderwall from like
exactly.
the guy pulling out the acoustic guitar at the campfire.
The wedding band
is. Yeah.
Yeah. The movie. Yeah, I mean, there's the Wonderwall sequence of him singing it, Noel singing it. But yeah,
I guess you could say maybe there's a little Liam dismissiveness towards Wonderwall when it was only being played acoustic. Maybe a twinge in that one interview they have. No, you guys don't think so?
Like, do you
I think yeah.
Do you think Liam ever asked Noel, like, what the hell do these lyrics mean? Like, slowly walking down the hall faster than a cannonball? Whatever. There's a million of them. Do you think he ever said, like, what are you on about? Or did he just look at those lyrics and like, yeah, right, that's what I'm going to sing. Like, like, it never has crossed his mind to wonder what the hell this was about, you know? After all, you're my Wonderwall, whatever.
No, I think I don't think he has ever asked what
There's
the
no
meaning
way
of
he
one of these songs is.
What would Noel say? Like, oh, you know what? Here, grab a cup of tea. Let's talk. Here, let's take a
Well,
seat. Like,
no, I mean, Noel always says like these songs, they're just words that sound good together, and I think that's a little bit of a dodge. I think there's more to some of the songs.
That's total dodge. Get the fuck out
But
of here.
no, I'm more talking about Liam, like as the type of person who like, it's like. It's almost Liam's almost like the type of person that like is a very serious right winger and is like shocked to hear that "Born in the USA" is like a left wing song. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I never listened to the lyrics. You know what I mean? Like, he seems as though he's never listened to the lyrics of the song that he's been singing for 30 years.
I actually would love to hear the 10-second clip of him talking about the idea of breaking down song lyrics. Just like, what's the point? Like, you sing the song, you like the song, you sing along with the song. If the song's over, you move on to the next song. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
I'm not saying he's not an intelligent guy. I'm just saying like it doesn't. He never betrays that he's thought about these things.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, what else are we missing here? You know, it's. The shuffling of the band members is, you know, whatever. That's just whatever. You know, that's not really the stuff you care about.
Well, so I guess we should say, you know, this is the Gallagher brothers as Bob Dylan said, the Oasis brothers.
Have
you seen that interview, Brendan?
Yeah, I saw the clip of him. Yeah. I might take that. The Oasis brothers.
It's like the Sparks brothers.
Yeah, exactly. So they're the executive producers. You know, I think the movie embeds a read on why it ends at Knebworth, where, you know, so it begins at Knebworth, it ends at Knebworth. They say it felt like the end of something, not the beginning of something. When they're first talking about the show, somebody else says it felt like we could have gone off into a puff of smoke at the end of it.
Bonehead says that, yeah.
Bonehead says it. So like, they've left the breadcrumbs here for the idea that like that was the end of like our Supersonic era, our Supersonic rush to be the biggest thing in the world. And so that's the artistic choice we've made here about why to cover this. You know, it's convenient that by ending it there, they don't need to spend much time in some of the more like litigious stuff that comes later, some of the fights that the band gets into. You don't need to litigate whether there was any consternation because Noel was making more money as the songwriter than the other guys or anything like that, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff in that ensuing 13 years that maybe they would have rather not talked about, and as the executive producers, they made a decision to leave out that was not like primarily artistically driven. Maybe.
Well, there is a documentary about Liam, right?
There is.
I have not seen it,
and it's similarly hagiographic. Is that the correct term? It is. Yeah. It is like a reputation PR. It's good,
right? Yeah.
But you know,
but that covers a longer span of time, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't seen it.
It covers mostly post Oasis.
Oh, okay.
He was
all right. So
it's like his comeback as a solo artist. Okay. He became a huge hit in UK as a solo artist. So that's what it covers.
Got it. Okay. So it's more just like a diss track aimed at his brother.
It would be awesome if they did another one about this period, but just about Liam. like multiple movies.
But that would like
a
Rashomon
cinematic universe about these 4 years.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we've kicked this football around enough. But you know, anything you guys want to have left on the table, let's hear it out.
Well, I'll just say Good movie. This is the stuff I come to this genre for. I want to hear the music. I want to hear some good stories from the road. I want like a handful of quotes that I can, put in my back pocket to use at some later date. It delivers on all of those. Is it the most artistically challenging of any of the docs that we have covered? No, but this is what I'm here for. This is meat and potatoes, rock doc stuff.
If you're, in my opinion, if you're pressed for time, watch the first hour with extreme attention. Take notes like I did. And then fast forward 45 minutes and then watch the last 15 minutes. So I encourage everyone to watch the whole thing. But if you have an hour and 15 minutes, that's the hour and 15 minutes you should watch. This is one of my favorite rock docs from one of my favorite bands. You know what I have to say? If you invite me, we'll be back here probably next year when either Netflix or Apple TV releases the rumored reunion documentary that is supposedly in the works. So watch out for that one.
So they're going with the Beatles. You got a tour, you got a live TV program, and you got a movie. It's a very sellable package.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. If they, I'd love to see the part 2. Yeah, man. I mean, it's a solid movie. It's it is a little bit like of meat and potatoes, but that's what you want. It's a great hang. Like, you put this movie on, there's no bad songs. It's just fun and funny. You can dip in and out and just be amused by what's going on. But it also doesn't require a lot of your attention if you've already watched it and taken notes, like Brendan, and so it has that thing. But yeah, I mean, these guys, like, I would watch 20 movies about these guys, like, there's no amount of content these guys could produce of them talking about themselves and about each other and about Oasis that I would not find compelling. They're just endlessly,
they're some of the best guys. They're some of the best guys.
Yeah, they're just, they're probably terrible people to be around. And total assholes. At least were. Maybe now.
Liam for sure. I think Noel would actually be fun to be around.
Yeah, maybe. But at least to each other. Or to work with. They're probably terrible to work with.
Yeah.
But boy, they made some great music, and they have a lot to say. And it's cool. They're I don't know if I'm going to make it to the Rose Bowl, but I'm not thinking about it. I'll put it that way. So
Make a road trip.
Yeah.
I'll be at the Rose Bowl. It's crazy
right.
to think. The idea that I won't be there is just it's one of these stupid things I tell myself for like a few months to like feel responsible before my impulses get the better of me.
The Rose Bowl is so big. It is amazing that they're doing 2 shows there. That is a big, like, that's got to be bigger than they ever were in the U.S. before. Like,
they didn't play stadiums here.
Yeah, or like not as just them. So boy, shout out to them. Anyway, yeah, those guys are great talkers. So we should probably extend the invitation. Liam, Noel, if either or both of you guys want to come on Rock Docs, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, Brendan, have they done any good podcast appearances you can recommend?
Ooh,
do you know
podcasts? No, I'm not. No, I don't. They're always on British radio, and those clips come up on YouTube. So just tell them you're a radio station, and they'll come on. They'll talk for 2 hours.
I think the idea of doing a podcast would be despicable to these guys.
I actually,
exactly.
Like Liam would be disgusted. Just like
maybe Noel, but Liam, yeah, with the idea.
What is the point?
Why would you do that? Which would be great. Liam, if you want to come on and just talk shit to us, please.
Yeah,
we will sub for you whatever you need. All right. Anyway, there you go. Oasis, Supersonic. We enjoyed the film. Brendan, thank you for. I think you said this is your first ever podcast appearance. Is that right?
It is my first ever podcast appearance, and I said I'd be your best guest, which proved true. So,
absolutely. Much like Oasis, you came in with the confidence and you delivered. And the world will be singing.
You have Mark Maron's head in your refrigerator now.
Yeah, no doubt. Hundreds of thousands of people will be singing along to this podcast. Anyway, all right.
That's perfect. No, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for listening to Rock Docs, folks.
Funny as fuck, man. You know, we were pretty mental.
No one had ever come along that was even remotely like us.
Their debut album is already the classic of our time.
Then it just blew up.
The most popular rock and roll band in Britain today.
Oasis were involved in a drunken brawl.
Immediately condemned by politicians.
The day that it steps over into the tabloids, then you've gone to the dark side. Trouble seemed to find us.
It all happened too quick.
Oasis was like a Ferrari. Great to look at, great to drive, and it'll fucking spin out of control every now and again.
Oasis's greatest strength was me and Liam. It's also what drove the band into the ground in the end.
Give it up for Oasis.
It just caught fire all over the world.
It was fucking biblical, man.
It was just a great time to be alive.
I'd do it all again in that beat.
Sometimes I wish it had gone a different way, but it hasn't.
I just think in the times in which we live, it would be unrepeatable.
If this ever goes on like a video, I would apologise, but I'm not going to, because he's a prick.